I never thought a dusty box in the back of my old storage unit could change everything. The label was barely legible, written in a spidery hand. SCP-67 Archive. Do not open. Of course, I opened it. Inside were dozens of VHS tapes, their plastic cases yellowed and warped with age. Somehow I knew this wasn't ordinary footage. The tapes felt wrong, like they had been waiting for someone to notice them. I took the first one, slid it into an old VHS player I hadn't touched in years, and the screen flickered to life. Static, lines of interference crawling across the screen, and then a figure. Just a shadow, shifting unnaturally, framed in the grainy black and white of old analog recording. The camera trembled slightly, as if held by an unsteady hand. At first, it looked like a home video. Someone's living room, a family laughing, a dog barking at the corner of the frame. But something was off. Every time the family laughed, the shadows behind them seemed to stretch longer, reaching for no one. Faces that should have been joyful were blurred, smeared, almost melting into the background. I paused the tape, squinting. There was a note taped to the TV screen in the footage. Do not acknowledge it. It watches differently when noticed. A chill ran down my spine. Why would someone leave a warning inside a recording? I pressed play again. The image warped, flickering faster now, as though the tape itself had a heartbeat. The family was gone. The room was empty, furniture casting long, unnatural shadows. A faint, static-laced hum filled the speakers. Then, in the corner of the screen, a shape appeared. It was human-shaped, but the proportions were wrong. Too tall, too thin. It tilted its head in ways a normal person couldn't. And yet, the sense of recognition was uncanny, as if it knew me, even though I'd never seen it. I froze, gripping the edge of the console. The figure didn't move forward, but the static around it seemed to pulse like a warning. Then a whisper, barely audible, came through the speakers. Do you see me? I couldn't look away. Something about SCP-67 demanded attention. As the tape continued, the footage became less home video and more archival. Black and white stills of ordinary people, children playing in yards, office workers typing, blended seamlessly with frames of the shadowed figure. Every time I blinked, the figure was closer, always just at the edge of recognition. The oddest part was the sound. The whispering wasn't consistent. Sometimes it was laughter, distorted and hollow. Sometimes it was crying. Sometimes it was my own voice, repeating phrases I didn't remember saying. I rewound the tape. Maybe I missed something. But the moment I did, I realized it wasn't just on the screen. The static seemed to reach out from the TV, filling the room. My reflection in the glass warped. For a split second, I saw the shadow standing behind me. The last frame of the tape was a note scrawled on a wall in black marker. We are always here, even when you turn away. I sat back, heart hammering. What had I found? A cursed tape? A forgotten experiment? Or something alive? I had to know more. I looked through the rest of the box. Each tape had the same warning. Cryptic notes, static-laced images, shadows that seemed to move when unobserved. Something about SCP-67 was designed to be found, to be watched. And as I picked up the second tape, I felt it. Something almost sentient, waiting, watching. I didn't know yet that this was only the beginning. I inserted the second tape hesitantly, half expecting the TV to explode, half hoping nothing would happen. The screen flickered, static crawling like slow-moving frost. The first few frames were familiar. Family photos, suburban streets, but distorted in ways I couldn't explain. The houses looked too empty. Windows stared back like black eyes. And then, there it was again, the figure, taller than before, tilting its head slowly, observing. I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, it was gone. But the hum lingered, a low, vibrating resonance, vibrating through the floorboards, through my bones. Something was trying to communicate, not with words, but with presence. As I continued to watch, I noticed subtle changes in my apartment. Shadows seemed longer than usual. Objects weren't where I remembered leaving them. A photograph of myself on the wall flickered like a bad channel, and for a split second, my reflection in the glass was not mine. It was elongated, blurred, twisted. I shook my head. "It's just the tape," I whispered, though my voice sounded wrong to me, like it had been filtered through static. Static became laughter, faint, hollow, teasing, not malicious, but knowing. I felt as if the tape was alive, feeding on my attention. The footage shifted again. Faces I recognized, people from TikTok clips, viral videos, random streams, appeared in the grainy black and white. They weren't doing anything remarkable, just walking, smiling, performing ordinary tasks. But the figure was there too, blending in, subtle at first, a shadow in the corner, a shape slightly taller than the others. Then closer, bending in impossible ways. By the time I noticed it clearly, I realized my own reflection had joined the scene, standing in the corner of a room I had never been in. I slammed the tape out of the player. My breathing echoed in the empty apartment. I tried to convince myself it was just editing tricks, analog distortion, some viral meme phenomenon. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I couldn't stop thinking about the notes scrawled in the first tape, and then it happened. I was walking past the TV when the static flared up again. Brief, sharp, almost like a camera flash. And in that moment, words appeared, written across the screen in jagged white lines. "You watch, you see, you are next." I stumbled back. My mind raced. It wasn't just a tape anymore. It was a warning, a command, a reflection of something that existed outside the footage, waiting. The room felt colder. Shadows pooled in corners, thick and unnatural. Every small sound, a creak, a click, the hum of the refrigerator, felt amplified, distorted, like the world had shifted slightly out of alignment with reality. I tried to leave the apartment, to escape the feeling, but the door wouldn't open. Not physically, but perceptually. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. Light fixtures flickered unnaturally. I wasn't sure if I was awake or still part of the tape. I picked up the third tape from the box, my hands shaking. Something was pulling me toward it, almost sentiently. The label read simply, "Exposure level high." I slid it into the player. The static hit me like a wave. And this time, the figure didn't just appear on screen. It was in the room. Not fully formed, but there, behind me, in every reflective surface, in the periphery of my vision. It didn't move closer. It was everywhere. And then the whisper returned, clearer than before. "Do you remember me?" I froze. I didn't remember, but somehow I felt like I should. I pressed play on the third tape, hands trembling. The static filled the screen instantly, harsher than before, almost screaming. Images flickered, empty streets, abandoned playgrounds, shadows stretching unnaturally across walls. At first, it seemed random, but then I noticed the pattern. The camera followed me, not literally, but in a way that made me feel every corner of my apartment had been captured. The angles were impossible. I recognized my own reflection, walking behind me in the grainy frames, but I hadn't moved. The whisper returned, persistent now. Closer. You cannot turn away. The line between the footage and my surroundings began to blur. I glanced at the living room mirror and froze. The shadowy figure from the tapes appeared behind me, just for a fraction of a second, then vanished. The same shape flickered in the corners of my vision as I moved across the room. The walls themselves seemed alive, breathing slowly, stretching. I reached out to touch the doorframe. It warped under my fingers, as though it existed both in the tape and the real world simultaneously. I realized then that SCP-67 was not confined to the VHS. It was a doorway, and I had stepped inside. I turned back to the screen. Faces I had never seen personally now stared at me with eerie familiarity. My neighbors, the barista at the corner cafe, even people from old social media clips, all appeared in the flickering frames. Their movements were ordinary, mundane, except for the shadowy distortions. Limbs bending slightly too long, heads tilting at unnatural angles, smiles stretching beyond comfort. And always in the periphery, the figure, watching, tilting its head, growing subtly taller with each frame. I wanted to stop, to eject the tape, but the player had locked. The tape kept rolling, the static now buzzing in my skull. My reflection in the TV shimmered, then split, like a double exposure. The whispering turned into faint laughter. My laughter! I didn't remember making it, yet I heard it echoing around the apartment. I stumbled backward. The shadows pooled and elongated unnaturally, merging with the images on the screen. It was no longer just a video. It was a living memory, a distortion, and I was trapped inside it. "Do you remember now?" the voice asked. I shook my head, but deep down, I felt a thread of recognition, like a memory I had never lived. I turned toward the window for relief, hoping the outside world would be untouched. But the street below had changed. It was black and white, grainy like the tape. Shadows moved along the sidewalks, stretching and twitching unnaturally. My neighbors appeared, frozen mid-step, faces blurred, and behind them, the figure, always there, watching, waiting. I stumbled back, tripping over a cable. The TV screen went black for a heartbeat, then flickered back to life. The tape ended, or so it seemed. A final frame, my apartment exactly as it was now, but empty. Except for one thing. The figure was standing in the corner. I sank to the floor, heart hammering. I understood finally. SCP-67 wasn't just a tape. It wasn't just an analog horror meme or a viral phenomenon. It was an entity, a presence that fed on observation. Watching wasn't optional. Every time someone viewed SCP-67, it adapted, growing closer, learning, integrating memories, faces, shadows. It was patient, subtle, almost polite, until it wasn't. And I had become part of it. I didn't know how much of me was still me, and how much had already been absorbed into the static, the grain, the distortion. I looked at the fourth tape. The label read only, "Final Exposure." I didn't want to watch, but I couldn't look away. I held the fourth tape in my hands, trembling. "Final Exposure," it read, in the same spidery handwriting. My apartment was silent, too silent. Shadows pooled in corners, stretching unnaturally, almost crawling along the walls. I inserted the tape. The static erupted immediately, a roaring wave of white noise that pressed against my skull. For a moment, I wanted to turn it off, but I couldn't. Something inside me urged me to watch. The screen flickered, showing my apartment, not as it was, but as it should have been. Empty, perfect, sanitized. Except for the corner. The figure waited. Ecstatic began to pulse in time with my heartbeat. The figure moved closer, but its movements were wrong. Jagged, disjointed, stretching unnaturally. It didn't walk. It glided, as if the room itself carried it forward. The whisper returned, louder, insistent. "You cannot hide. You are part of me." I stepped back, tripping over the carpet. Every reflective surface, the TV, the mirror, the glass of water on the table, showed the figure, always behind me, always tilting its head. And then, for the first time, it spoke without distortion. "I've waited for you. Now you see." I felt my own shadow stretch across the floor, separate from me, merging with the figure. Panic surged. Was I being pulled in? Was my reflection leaving me? The tape flickered violently. My surroundings warped, walls bending, ceiling rippling. The line between the video and reality shattered. My reflection wasn't mine anymore. It moved independently, mimicking the figure's impossible angles. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the static. My hands reached for the tape player, but it dissolved beneath my touch, leaving only the spinning static on the screen. And then, silence. I opened my eyes. My apartment seemed normal again. The lights worked, the shadows behaved, and the tapes lay scattered on the floor. But something was off. I looked at the mirror. My reflection blinked once, slowly, and smiled. Not me. Something else. I stumbled backward, heart racing, and caught a glimpse of the corner. The figure wasn't there, but I could feel it. Always watching, always learning. I didn't touch the tapes again. I shoved them into the box and hid it in the storage unit. But every now and then, I hear static in the background of my apartment. A faint hum, a whisper, and sometimes, just sometimes, I think I see it in my peripheral vision. Waiting. Days later, a notification appeared on my phone. A new video uploaded. No title, no comments, just a black and white thumbnail. I hesitated, but curiosity burned. I tapped it. Static. And then a single phrase appeared, typed in jagged white letters across the screen. "We are always here. And now, so are you." I dropped my phone, and I knew, without a doubt, that this wasn't over. SCP-67 was still watching, always.